Greetings, explorers. Let's take a look at the city of Edmonton in the province of Alberta, Canada. I want to show you a little bit of the landscape of the city itself, as it'll factor into a lot of the buildings we take a look at moving forward. You can see the city here is divided by the North Saskatchewan River. A historical narrative on this location has it as two different emerging communities, the southern half of the river being Strathcona and the north being the city of Edmonton, eventually merging sometime in the early 1900s. Let's take a look at the population demographics. Now we have a city of 1 million, modern day. If you know anything about the region, you know that it is heavy oil industry, petroleum, but that didn't really kick off until 1947. Something happening sometime around here. Interesting, I thought, because the real population growth percentage-wise occurs way back here at the beginning of the narrative. And what we're going to be looking at is mostly buildings that were built in this time period. So you can see here 1901 we have a census of just under 3,000, growing to about 50,000, let's say, right before World War I. I would also like to feature the work of Michelle Gibson. Now, Michelle Gibson has done extensive work on what we know of as the Old World energy grid, taking the shape of a star tetrahedron, and she mentions the city of Edmonton as a major nodal point on the star tetrahedron. So I'll link this video in the description if you want to learn more about her research. The suggestion here being that Edmonton was an old world hub that was dug out after some form of cataclysm, flooded the area with mud. And I'll just quickly show you her map of the star tetrahedron. You can see these major nodal points meeting at the city of Edmonton. Also important to mention, I believe, before we move forward, is some of the early history that we are given about the region. Now we have the Hudson's Bay Company forming the outpost in this region, but the fur trade really dying off after 1870, so not a lot of an explanation for settlement in the region. We have the railway system making its way up to Strathcona on the south side of the river in 1891, but it did not enter Edmonton on the north shore of the river until 1903, when they connected that with a low-level bridge. Edmonton becoming a city in 1904, with a mere 5,000 people. They declared it the capital. Interesting. And then you get, of course, the Canadian Northern Railway connecting from Winnipeg in 1905 and connecting with Vancouver as well in 1915. Okay, so this early time period, not a lot going on, not a lot of explanation for what's going on in Edmonton. Agriculture, a few rail lines making their connection points, massive boom in population, real estate given as the explanation for a lot of this boom in population. Not making a lot of sense to me. Nevertheless, we have some magnificent structures in the area. Let's begin with the Provincial Administration Building. This one's supposedly going up in 1931. Maybe you can see ticking all the boxes and hallmarks of the old world. Alright, Edmonton having an armory. Built in 1913, looking pristine, really. This is a modern day photograph. 1913. You're going to see this date pop up consistently throughout this video. So remember the population at the time in 1913. Well, what are we going to say? Somewhere around 35,000, maybe 40,000, somewhere in there. Not a lot of people. But despite that fact, we have all sorts of buildings like this going up. And of course, you have to have a brewery. There's that date again. Check out the stack. Spectacular brick stack. Would love to see a crisper colorized version of this, making very little sense in such a small remote location. Here we have the high-level bridge connecting the north and south of the river. You can see the old tram municipal rail system fully in effect in this region in such a remote location. A lot of infrastructure going on there to make that possible. So again, another large industry would have having to have been explained as being constructed at that time. You're going to see a few street scenes of early Edmonton now, and I want you to hold that in your mind. The low population, the real poor explanation for why this place was booming at the time. To be honest with you, I can't. Usually we're given some sort of other reason. But just the fact that the rail lines were making their connection points at this time, is that enough to explain such a massive boom in population? When we know that these massive booms are going on in so many other locations in North America as well. So, what I think we're looking at, what I propose, is the remains or the remnants of what we call the Old World. What Michelle Gibson calls the Moorish civilization, the builder civilization that was destroyed, and the remains were dug out and presented to us in a very implausible, difficult to believe timeline where you really can't fit it all into such a short period of time. Now this one's a really good visual to give you a sense of what we have been taught is the Old World and what is actually the Old World. I have the Parliament building or the legislature in the background there, and this is the fort, right? And many of the old houses. We have Romanesque style banks with columns, dentil molding, and you have a streetcar system looking like it's been there for quite some time. Here we have the Canadian National Railway Station, supposedly built in 1905, demolished in the early 60s. 1905. Remember, how many people were there in 1905? Let's have a look. Now here we have 1905, about 10,000 people, let's say. So, what do you think? And I remember, a lot of people try to explain, well, they brought in all these builders to do this. This is going on everywhere. Really going on everywhere. All you have to do is look into it. Just not enough time, not enough manpower, not enough ability to do all this in such a short period of time. This is why we question the narrative. I liked this photograph because here's that railway station I just showed you. But this one, I couldn't find any explanation for what that is. If you're from Edmonton and know any more about this, please throw it in the comments. Of course, no shortages of churches in the region. That's the Knox Church, 1907. 1908, Methodists, all denominations showing up in Edmonton at this time and building their structures in a very similar manner. Here we have the Presbyterians doing their thing in 1913. They must have poached the workers off some of the larger projects going on at the time, as you'll see. This one, the St. Joachim Catholic, 1899. That's very early time period for this. Very, you think it would just be a wooden structure, maybe with a little steeple. But nope, we're talking about brick, and this also looks like you have stairs going down below, behind here. 1899. You buying it? Here's the interior of that church. Some seriously skilled master woodworkers living there at the time would have to have been, and working very quickly. St. Joseph Basilica began apparently in 1913. You have a bit of the bulging, blistering rock or brickwork going on here. What I have proposed is potentially damage, heat damage. You'll see better evidence of that moving forward. This is the St. Jehoshaphat's Ukrainian Catholic Church, built supposedly between 1939 and 1947. Drove by this several times while I was in Edmonton, feeling like it has much more of a presence, more age to it than that. But in case you're casting any seeds of doubt on it, they do have a construction photo for us to solidify the narrative. And of course the interior of that church, not to be outdone by the exterior. Moving on to the courthouse. 1908. So railway just getting established. They built that railway station in 1905. They must have been in the mood for columns, because they went with a similar style for the courthouse in 1908. Tore it down in 1972. 64 years this baby lasted. There it is before they tore it down. You can see the ground floor windows. Obviously there is something below ground there. And then they're black and white beauty for you with the whited out skies. And one of many red brick structures, the Edmonton Club. Now this, a real treat, very difficult to find. Apparently Edmonton had an inclined rail system that only lasted 3 years. Of course you have some sort of large structure, brick structure up here, so that having to have been built at a very early time period as well, if we're to believe the historical narrative. Very interesting, I thought, and difficult to find, and you wonder why. And a nice visual for you of the streetcars, well established in the region, not looking new at all, and the old world majesty of the legislature building in the background. And you have the steam train narrative, part of what I contend is part of the old world, the steam train technology, repurposed and put into action with the whole new world and its order. This will be the high level bridge. The Empire Block, 1905. 1, 2, 3, 4 stories. Who's building that in 1905? Not to be outdone, the Ernst Brown Block, 1912. And this is just a quick feature of a pipe organ in the First Presbyterian Church. I thought I'd add that because I have featured pipe organs in many videos as being a part of the old world civilization. The St. Aldhelm Church, built in 1903. The Gibson Block, 1913 open. Flatiron Building. This one's still standing. I drove by that while I was there. Interesting, the streets too. As we look a little closer, are we looking at possibly mud covering brick streets? Hard to tell. That would be a dead giveaway, and that would really create problems with their narrative if we saw the brick streets here. Cobbles, whatever you want to call it. Lieutenant Governor's Residence, 1912 to 1913. Having that blistering look as well. And this one giving you a bit of that mud flood look. You have a fully exposed window here, and you have a window not quite fully exposed here. 1914. Now let's take a look at the famous high-level bridge. Here we have the construction of it in May 1913, we are told here. And we have a photograph of it fully operational here in June of 1913, so a month later all that construction complete, and we've already got trains, steam trains driving over top of it. And this taken from supposedly 1914, and giving you a sense of how claustrophobic it really feels. I drove over this, and for automobiles it definitely feels very closed in. But look at the construction on this. Like, that's not just a wham bam job, that's a serious steel structure. So at this point in the video, I want to take you over to the University of Alberta grounds. Supposedly the province was going to divvy up the capital and the university grounds into two cities, with Calgary getting one of the two, but it turned out that Edmonton got to be the capital, and it got to house the university. Have the university, I suppose. I wanted to feature this, and I'm going to show you a bunch of old world buildings from the U of A. But I found this little blurb interesting and relevant to our research in this community. They try to explain away the construction of some of these early buildings. They give us a couple architects, Alan Merrick Jeffers. There's another one on here. Don't really care. I tried to look for more on these people, and I couldn't even find pictures of them. So this is in the 1900s. There should be pictures. There should be more information, but it's bare bones. What I like in this explanation is how they describe the excavation began courtesy of 100 men with shovels, horses and wagons, and masons hand-cutting stone. Thanks, guys. Need those masons in there. And then the Athabasca Hall, the first of these residences, was finished in 1911. Let's take a look at that. And here's the result of those men with shovels and masons and horses and wagons. Athabasca Hall, mirroring two other structures, a Pembina Hall, and there's a third structure that looking almost identical to that we'll get to. Here we have the hospital on the university grounds. Here are those three structures. A big stack as well, not mentioned. It's very interesting. Now some other structures located on those grounds. Alberta College, or the Methodist College, looking like a castle, definitely going deep underground. This would be the third of those identical halls. I can't tell if they are that identical or they're just using the same picture. Sometimes it's difficult to tell. This would be the arts building at the university. You can see all the decoration going on there. The Corbett Hall, or what they're calling in this postcard a normal school. This is interesting, ties in with that whole old world re-education narrative. Teaching the teachers, making sure they know what to teach the next generations. And here we have one of those classic old world photos, almost looking like, hey, we've captured this building, like a victory pose. Everyone's out the windows, and very strange. These ones, you see them quite often from back then. Well, they've placed some cannons here, give you that real old-timey feel. You could put old in the picture. This would be the hospital we saw from a different angle, and giving us a view of the stack behind it again. You have some decoration on the stack too. I had to get rid of that. There's no way that still stands. This is the old Jesuits College at U of A. No, not a great photo. We have the Rutherford Library. Trillo Hall. Get a sense of the brickwork there. The decoration. The urn style decorations that we see on a lot of old world buildings. A new medical building. There's the arts building again, but definitely worth a second look. Let's see. We have the circular windows as well. And the last one in this file for U of A is the Queen Alexandria School, which apparently was the first location when the university was founded. They held classes in there or something like that. Alright, let's move on to the Holy Trinity Anglican Church. This built in 1913, we're told. I wanted to feature this. This architectural feature, we're told. The mainstream historical narrative tells us that these are clinker bricks that were incorporated into the build to achieve a specific look. I suggest what we're looking at here is actually heat damage and alteration of these bricks as a result of the heat damage. I can't really explain it in any other way. To me, that's more logical, because if you're a bricklayer, I think it makes very little sense to build in such a way. Anyone out there that's done that kind of work, what do you think of adding something such as this to your brickwork and then trying to maintain that level line as you move up? To me, again, looking more like damage. And there you have it. A decent view of the melting going on here. Melted brick. And there's that look. Chickenpox look. Look out for that in your communities. These seem to be riddled in all over the place. I don't know why that would affect certain structures and not others, but I'm not buying the architectural clinker brick explanation. Alright, early General Hospital. General Hospital looking a little bit different here. We have the Misericordia Hospital, 1906. Eventually gets torn down in the 70s. Very beautiful looking building, having that turret on the corner here. You're having that gate style look here. A part of old world tech, I would suggest. Very interesting. That harnessing, made to harness some sort of energy, ether. I don't know, what do you think? This one, of course, sort of confusing, because we're going to see it in conjunction with some other buildings. And you have it again in this postcard. This, though, definitely looking like there's been a bit of a cut and paste job going on here. So I don't know if they're trying to make it look like it started as this and then it grew. A lot of deception going on in these old photographs, so difficult to tell. Can't say for sure in one direction or the other, to be honest with you. Another look at the General Hospital, or another General Hospital, not looking the same. All right, Alberta Hotel, 1903. 1903, how many people living there? 1903, we're probably looking at 4,000 people. Here we have the Corona Hotel, built in the 30s, I believe, having that Art Deco look. I don't know, I wanted to throw it in there. King Edward Hotel, 1904. Remember what, 4,000 people? 5,000 people maybe? They're building stuff like this. They have the time and resources to put this on the top. And I think we're looking at, hard to tell in this photo, but I think we're looking at excavation work here, so these all have lower levels. Hotel McDonald, or McDonald Hotel, opened in 1915, sitting very close to the legislature building. This would be an old world beauty as far as I'm concerned. Part of the Fairmont hotels, which are connected to the railways. We've got a Banff Springs, we've got Chateau Frontenac, the Laurier Hotel in Ottawa, Saskatoon has one, Empress Hotel in Victoria. A large part of the Canadian narrative having to do with the railways and the Fairmont hotels. So this would be Edmonton's version. Hudson's Bay Building number 1. Hudson's Bay Building number 2. And we come to it at last. The Legislature Building, or the House of Parliament. Let's take a look at the narrative on this. So, Alberta Legislature Building, built between 1907 and 1913. So we have a 6-year window to get this thing done. At a very early time period, the demographics at the time, 1907, we're looking at about 12 to 15,000 people living in the city, but they felt the need to build a building such as this. Let's take a look. It's kind of comical too when you start to read the descriptions for these things on the Wikipedia, which are usually just cut and pasted from other official historical sites. It starts to read like a whole bunch of hogwash after a while. I think that's what we're looking at here. And this is looking like the waterworks down here. But this I find very telling, this photograph here. I believe we are looking sort of southwest here. I did do a good walk around of this building. It really is something special. Walked in among these columns, and these things are massive and looking fresh. Really something special, this building. This looking very mudded though. Looking mudded over, looking like it's been there a while and almost being dug out. Even the stairs, I don't know, almost looks like flooded over. And you've got these little pine trees growing here. 15-year-old pine trees, juvenile pine trees. And of course you've got the Union Jack up here claiming their territory for Crown and Country. Crown having a major influence on this region. But in case you were doubting the narrative, they do have a construction photo for us, brought to you by the McDermott Stone Company out of Ohio. To me, looking more like some sort of refinishing, maybe window work going on here, and then this looking just like a scrub job, cut and paste. There's no construction going on here, in my opinion. Anyway, moving on, Le Marchand apartment house, built in 1912. Basement excavation. This going on not far from the legislature building. How many people were in the building? Trades in Edmonton in the early 1900s. Still stands to this day, looking spectacular. Of course, such a bustling, thriving community had to have a public library, and thanks to the Carnegie funding of all the public libraries, pretty much in North America and abroad at the time, we have 1923 we have a public library going up, but they had to demolish it 44 years later, 1967. And if this doesn't look grand enough for you, then maybe this gives you a sense of how grand this building would have had to have been. I don't know, something about this entryway feeling quite large and majestic and not making sense to me. Strathcona community, south of the river, having their own library. There it is in color. Red bricker with that sandstone features you see all over Edmonton. The McGrath Mansion, this is sort of a little touristy spot you can go check out. And of course, you had to have your presence, didn't you? Presence being felt, the Freemasons Hall in Edmonton. Here a visual of the entire building with some nice hazy skies, of course, and a color version giving you the sense of that sort of bit of a religious sense going on there, if you're, for lack of a better word. Okay, we have the McLeod building, built in 1915. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stories. All sorts of detailing going on up here. 1915, eh? Okay. I don't believe you, but sure. We have to build a castle for the police barracks. 1912. That's a little side job for the Brickies because they're so busy everywhere else. They probably threw this up on a couple weekends. Of course, I had to dig because you have basement windows. But luckily you have a horse and a buggy of some sort to transport all these materials, these building materials for you. So, and a half-mast Union Jack for icing on the cake. Alright, fire hall. Nice posed photograph for us. And another armory. Ortona Armory Building, built 1913. There's that year again. Now we've seen these two, we're about to see the post office. Let's get through a few more first. Permanent building, 1910. Again, remember, all that legislature building would be going up at the time. You'd think a project so large would be consuming all the construction workers in the area for a city of 50,000. But no, they had the time, resources, and ability to throw a whole bunch of these up during the same period of time. Here we have the post office in the background. This one we're featuring the bank, 1907, this bank here, built. There's the post office now. Built in 1910, again during that same time period that the legislature was being put together. They had time to hop over and build a post office, which they didn't really care too much about in the city, apparently, because they demolished it in the 70s, 60 years later. But this is interesting, how we'd have no roof for the building here, but we have sky. All these clouds looking a bit too rounded over for my liking. So there's some good evidence of photographs being doctored. Not to be outdone though, we have Strathcona in the south, also from 1911 to 1913, having their own post office built. And the Salvation Army Citadel, built in 1925, we are told. Extensively remodeled in the 70s to the point where it's beyond recognition, I would suggest. And now we get into a whole series of schools. 1910, we're told this one is built. We'll see it again, but really, this one for some reason jumps out at me. 1910. How many people living in Edmonton at that time? 40,000, if that. And how many other construction projects are going on at the same time? But they're able to throw this up. Alright, I'm going to roll through the schools fairly quickly. 1907. 1895 to 1918. Didn't get barely 20 years out of that one. Have any dates for this one. That's a Redbreaker. 1902 to 1964. Holland Grey School, built 1913. 1904, McKay Avenue. Same school, different picture. Something's up. Not sure what to make of that. North Edmonton School, built 1910. Looks like the detention area right here. Norwood Public School, 1909. Here's what it looks like today, almost like it hasn't aged a day. Don't tell me that they're tearing these down because they're dilapidated. These things are still standing strong on strong foundations. Oliver School, right in the middle of a farmer's field, I guess. Had to have a school in the middle of the field in 1910, amidst all the other construction that's going on. Parkdale School, which I was able to walk around, take some pictures of, and peek through the windows. I didn't include the pictures. I think there's enough information in the video, but I did peek through these windows and I noticed that you could look about 10 feet down to a lower level, so this is definitely a usable space at this level. A little bit confusing though, because the building modern day comes up to full height with the main structure here. You'll see some more pictures of this one as well here coming up. 1902-1949 Queens Avenue School. Here we have a residential school, 1900. Okay, let's roll through these. 1911 Macaulay School. This is the same photograph as the one I just showed you, the Parkdale School, or the same structure. So I don't know what's going on there. Pulled it off a website from the school district there, so they obviously can't get their stuff straight either. 1913, John A. McDougall School. 1913, King Edward School. 1913-1916, Highland School. 1913-1915, Westmount School. I checked this one out as well. Can't really see them very well here, but it's got some nice cupola dome type things going on here. Interesting looking school. Strathcona School, with the dome and the tech. 1908, very early time period, making very little sense. One little thing I wanted to add before we wrap it up here. So the heart of downtown, right in that legislature building, as I was walking around the grounds, they have these glass dome covered structures you can look down into. What I found out is the Pedway, Edmonton Pedway, which is a series of underground tunnels connecting 40 buildings and parkades in the heart of the downtown area. I found that very interesting. This is the Wikipedia page on that. And what I find interesting is actually how sparse the information on all this is. So, what do you think? I don't know. Were the tunnels there before? Is they just digging them out? Or is this some sort of retrofit they went underground to connect all these places? Okay, my final photograph is the Tegner block, built 1911 to 1913. There's that date again. Demolished in 1982. Very, very early time period. Not a lot of people living here in Edmonton. How many stories do you need? How grand do you need to make it? I don't know. What do you think? To me, it's obvious that there is much more to the story than we are being told. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.